Thank you all so much for inviting me to be guest speaker this year for the Dr. King celebration here in Waukegan. Some of my favorite people and fondest memories are right here in Waukegan, and so I just thank you so much for asking me to be the King Day speaker. I want to talk from the subject, what would Dr. King tweet about today? Or if you want to be shorter, I want to talk about tweets from Martin Luther King Jr. Today we pause to commemorate the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. A life well lived, but a life that was lost way too soon. At 39 years of age, on April 4th, 1968, at 6:01 in the afternoon, 54 years ago, Dr. King was assassinated while standing on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel. To summarize the life of our leader, our hero, Dr. King burst on the national scene at the age of 26 when he was chosen to be the spokesperson for the Montgomery bus boycott. That boycott would last over 100 days. Dr. King hung in there. He convinced the people of Montgomery to hang in there until they saw victory. The movement that Dr. King led was the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. The Southern Christian Leadership Conference, by its own name, it started in the South, but later it came even up here where we are to the north. And this movement that Dr. King led fought for open housing because everybody couldn't live where they wanted to live. It fought for public accommodations. This movement fought to end Jim Crow. It fought to end redlining because banks would not loan money to certain sides of town. It fought for the right to vote because every citizen should have equal rights and the right to vote. Dr. King's movement fought for a livable wage. The movement lasted just 13 years. In 13 years, it was one man, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., his leadership transformed our nation. His leadership lit a fire up under America, and it began to free a people, not only just physically, but Dr. King began to free our mind. However, 54 years ago, April 4th, 1968, 6:01 p.m., his life was taken away. Before I get into the things that I think that Dr. Martin Luther King would be tweeting about today, I want to begin by dealing with a myth. For 13 years, during the public ministry of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., everybody was not in love with Dr. King. Oh yeah, everybody loves him today, but during his lifetime, more people were against him than people that were with him. So that shows you now that even though people are against you, that don't mean that you're doing something wrong. As a matter of fact, it means that you're doing something right when people are against you. The federal government was not with Dr. King. The FBI was not with Dr. King. The white Christian church was not with Dr. King. The Ku Klux Klan was not with Dr. King. Scared black people were not with Dr. King. And jealous and small-minded African-American preachers were not with Dr. King. Now, these same groups today celebrate, and we have memorial services and King Day breakfasts and candle lighting services and bell ringing everywhere. But these groups and the groups that they represented, a lot of them could not stand Dr. King while he was alive. It's easier to love a dead man than it is to love a man that's alive, because a dead man can't ask you to go nowhere. A dead man can't ask you to make any sacrifices. But Dr. King was not loved like he's loved today when he was alive. We thank God, however, that he kept marching and that he kept moving. Only 500 people marched with Dr. King across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Only a few hundred people marched with Dr. King here in Chicago. As a matter of fact, a few hundred marched with him August 5th, 1966, when he was here in Chicago. 700 white protesters marched against him. But the brilliance of Dr. King was his ability to use the national media. The brilliance of Dr. King was how he used the media. Dr. King was able, in his nonviolent movement, Dr. King was able to use children. And 6 o'clock news would come on in the evening, and into people's living room, there they would see children being bit by dogs. There they would see nonviolent protesters being mowed down by water hoses. There they would see innocent people being carried off to jail, not because they stole anything, not because they looted, not because of smash and grab. All they wanted was the right to vote. And in that, Dr. King used the media so brilliantly in his day. And we use the media today through tweets. I wondered what Dr. King would be tweeting about if he had a Twitter account today. So here it is. I believe here are a few tweets that Dr. King would give us. I believe that if Dr. King were alive, Dr. King would be tweeting about the mass incarceration of black men in America by America. He would say that that was wrong. Did you hear what I said? I said that Dr. King would say that the mass incarceration of black men in America by America is wrong. I think that when it comes to prisons, Dr. King would not tweet to us, stay woke. I think he would tweet to us, wake up. Because we are sending our kids straight from school to jail with metal detectors, with cameras, with pat downs, with more men in schools who are working for prison systems than we have male counselors. We don't have male counselors in school. We have men who have turned our schools into prisons. 70% of all kids suspended in public schools are black and brown. 70%. Dr. King would tweet that since he's been dead, the size of the prison budget and the size of the prison population has tripled since he's been dead. Do you know that there was a young kid in grade school who took a carton of milk? That child was handcuffed, put in the back of a police car, and taken to the police station. I think Dr. King would tweet for us, wake up. It's wrong for us to be using prisoners as free labor. It's wrong for us to take prisoners, and then when men and women get out of jail, we're not training them. We're not giving them a chance at a job. We're not redeeming them. I think that Dr. King would tell us that it is something wrong with the mass incarceration of our citizens here in America. I think the second thing that Dr. King would probably tweet to us is our apathy at the polls. I think Dr. King would say something about this. Here it is, Swerner, Goodman, and Cheney gave their lives. People gave their lives for the right to vote. People marched for us to have the right to vote. When the marches were on Edmund Pettus Bridge, John Lewis almost lost his life marching for the right to vote. Yet in the last presidential election, there were more unregistered African-American people who did not go to the poll. We could swing any election that we decide, any school board election, any local election, any mayor's election. We could do it if we lose this apathy about voting. Stop going around thinking that your vote doesn't count. Your vote does count. It counts so much until people gave themselves up. They gave their lives away so that you and I could have the right to vote. There is still power in the ballot, and I think that we should use our vote. I think that all of us, under the sound of my voice, should spend every election cycle registering people to vote. If not just all people, our families. We should at least make sure that people are not apathetic when it comes to the voting. I think third of all, Dr. King would tweet, How did we allow schools to become segregated again? 1954 was a landmark year for us. It was a landmark year because we had the case Brown versus the Board of Education, and the Supreme Court said that America had to integrate schools. I was a product of that time period. During the 1960s, I went to school with white children. Black and white children went to school together. We were all learning together, and those of us who benefited from that, we turned out pretty well. Today, you all, 90% of all black kids go to school, public school, with only black kids. It was wrong then, and it's wrong now. All of these schools that are named after Dr. Martin Luther King, the Martin Luther King School of Los Angeles, 99% black. The Martin Luther King School in Cleveland, 99% black. The Martin Luther King School in Milwaukee, 99% black. The Martin Luther King School in Philadelphia, 99% black. And watch this, the graduation rate in those schools is less than 38%. Something is wrong in America when we have allowed black children to go to under-resourced, underfunded public schools. And then they're leaving those schools, going straight to jail. I think that Dr. King would tweet about the dilapidated system that we have in America called public education. Number 4, I believe that Dr. King would tweet about the silence of the white church. He would tweet about the silence of the white evangelical church. In 1963, there was no Twitter. So what did Dr. King do? On the margins of a newspaper, he wrote a letter from Birmingham, the letter from the Birmingham jail. He wrote that letter to the white evangelical pastors. And he was saying to the pastors there in Birmingham that if nobody understands equality, if nobody understands why I'm here, you all should understand why I'm here. And Dr. King was begging the white church to speak up on issues of injustice. If anybody should know about fairness and right from wrong, it should be the people of God. And I think that Dr. King would tweet even today about the silence of the white church. When it comes to Freddie Gray, white church is silent. When it comes to Ahmaud Arbery, when it comes to Stephon Clark, when it comes to Tamir Rice, we don't hear the white pulpit crying out or saying that these things are wrong. And I think that Dr. King would challenge that. He challenged it in 63, and I think that he would challenge it now. And then last of all, I think that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., if he had a Twitter account, he would tweet about the apathy of the black church. The black church has lost its will to fight. The Southern Christian Leadership Conference, they were organized and they got their momentum and thrust from the church. They didn't have the MacArthur Foundation to give them grants. They didn't have a Bill Gates scholarship to run the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. They had church people, church ladies, who would give their last, who would bake pies and sell cakes to support the movement, who would give transportation and who would cook meals to make sure that the Southern Christian Leadership Conference was funded. And here it is today, you all. We are wealthier than we have ever been before, but yet we are not funding our own civil rights organizations. And I think that the marchers who came out to all of the marches, they came from the African American church. And King would go to churches and he would rally African Americans. Listen now, you all, let's not lose our will to fight. We have so many things in our society that still need mending, still need fixing, still need to be worked on, still need to be put together again. We can do whatever we put our mind to do it, but we have to have a mind to work. We have to have a will to work. Let's not get tired. Let's not think that everything is solved and settled. Everything is not. So Waukegan, I applaud you. I applaud you for standing strong. I applaud you for still having a willingness to bring the city together, to work together. We can't stick our heads in the sand now and act like we don't have any problems, because we do. but we can overcome them just like King was able to overcome for 13 years with people working together. Thank you, Waukegan. So excited about what's going on there, and I'll continue to keep you in my prayers.